Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Brian Parks. I'm the CEO of JamFactory. Let me start by acknowledging that we're here on Ngāti Yata and acknowledge elders past, present, and emerging, and acknowledging First Nations people in the audience. This land was never ceded. And this land is also where the University of South Australia is currently, and I want to thank them for the ongoing partnership and the opportunity to host this series of talks in this great venue. It's our last talk for this term. We're just finalising the talks for term 2, and they'll be announced and publicised soon enough. But it is my pleasure today to give a very warm welcome to Regine Schwarzer, who is an accomplished contemporary jeweller who's been living in Australia for the past 30 years, originally from Germany and other bits of Europe, and based up in the Adelaide Hills, and also teaching at AC Arts. Regine has at times been a tenant of JamFactory, and we're thrilled that she's also one of our tutors with regular workshop offerings. And I'm so pleased that she agreed to give today's talk. Thank you, Regine.
Hello. Well, welcome. Thank you, everyone, for coming and being prepared to listen to my journey. And as Brian said, it's 50 years of JamFactory, 30 years for me in Australia, and 44 years when I started in the jewelry type metal craft, it's called. And well, I've put a thread together, and it was really interesting for me to put this PowerPoint together because, yeah, it's spanning over quite a while. So I had a lot in there, then I slashed a lot. So I think 40 images or something, which is still quite a lot for half an hour. But that saves me from talking too much. So it was a really good time for me to reflect and summarize, sum up. And I will focus on 4 bodies of work which I created during this time. There's a few little snippets of other stuff in between. But yeah, I sort of felt I used to do one maybe solo show every 4 or 5 years to get a body together, and yeah, that's it. So I think I click here and I'll start here. This is where it all began. This is quite a while ago, and probably a lot of you haven't been born then. When I went to this school, it's a very old school. It was established in, 1772, and some of the more well-known alumni include Carl Fabergé, and more contemporary ones, maybe someone is aware of Hermann Jünger, but I stopped the jewelry stuff now because the name dropping, because a lot of you are not really from the jewelry area. Well, a couple more words. I had no idea was ahead of me. I don't know if anyone spotted me. I had short hair and to the left standing. I had no idea about metalwork at all, and I got kind of dropped into it. I wanted to become a potter because I knew clay, and it was really a material I love to work with. And metal is pretty much the opposite. It's hard, stubborn, and painful sometimes. All right. So, so I spent 4 years there, obviously, and then I moved up north, worked for a year in a jewelry business, and it was pretty awful, and I decided to start my own practice, and alongside I did a little bit of metal forging, some raising, which is a specialized technique, and that was half a year. So I made these vessels, a wine carafe and a candle holder a little while ago, and my body doesn't quite allow me to do those things anymore. It's pretty physical. I mean, you guys have a metalsmith razor in your establishment, and she probably says sometimes things about her shoulders. All right. I spent a bit of time having some fun making parts for fashion shows, and did go to different exhibitions, the Frankfurt in Horgenta or whatever it was called then, and sold my work to galleries from there. But I also had about 10 galleries which represented me. It was in the 80s, which was a flourishing time, and quite a bit of a good income to be made in that field, which was lovely. Yeah, it was good. So this is sort of my earlier work, things I made in Germany. But when I got here, I was approached by Craft Arts International, or what it was called, to have a little article in their magazine. So yeah, that explains, that sort of shows a little bit of, is it a problem, Connor? It dropped. Okay. I used lots of little stones, and I worked with colors, silver, fine gold, patterns, engravings, and little colorful stones popped into everything. And yeah, had quite a bit of fun experimenting with that. 93, I came to Australia, and I pretty much straight away moved into the Adelaide Hills. This is in Belair National Park. I lived next to it and did do a lot of walking in there as well, in amongst jewelry making. So I lived all my 30 years here in the Adelaide Hills. And what happened is I wanted to use interesting materials in my work, and there's nothing commercially available, whereas in Germany there was a wide variety. It's a bit better now, but then I couldn't get anything, and I did a little opal cutting course at O'Halloran Hill, and subsequently met a really good stone cutter. He taught the course, and when he left to go to Western Australia, decided I want to engage in that myself, and I was lucky enough that ArtsSA funded me for my first lapidary machine, and I had a show at Süddesigns with that, exclusively featuring South Australian materials, all the gemstones, which are all cut, which was a little while ago. Okay, I guess. It's kind of quite a few opals in there, I can see. I do like the unusual looking ones, and the ones which don't glitter too much. And from then on, I bought myself a faceting machine. I was at the time working in the Harndorf Academy, and opposite a gem cutter opened a little shop, and we made friends, and he taught me faceting, which was quite a big task. And I only did fully facet 2 stones with 51 facets, I think it is, per stone, where you have to go 3 times over. Yeah, it was taxing, and you can buy them quite easily. So it opened a new world for me anyway to do these things myself. I busily went to rock collectors shows and bought lots of materials, started slapping and cutting and working with them a bit, which I had. This show was in the JamFactory, I think just when Brian arrived. And it was in Gallery 2, and I exclusively cut all the stones and used facet shapes, some larger pieces with more architecturally designed, and using patterns and structures within the stones, and sort of moving more and more away from faceting large, big stones. This is one other example. They're quite laborious, and I had a bit of help to polish the irregular facets. And anyway, then the ones on the left, they are basically just the crystals, quartz crystals, where I only polished existing facets and added a couple to and modified them. They can set them in rings and mainly enjoying all the different colors and shapes. On the right-hand side, there was a little picture before of the show. I'll pick some of these lovely colorful stones up and just cut on the top a few pyramid-shaped facets to create windows to look in the stone material to see that it's the internal life, and using obviously a lower grade material which I appreciate more because there is a lot more going on into it, can crack a lot easier. So I had again, they were quite fond of me by the looks of it. I had again a little publication in the Crafts Arts magazine, plus a beautiful little booklet which I was lucky enough that Arts SA funded me to put this together. At that time, I also studied at UniSA and engaged in master studies, and that was almost parallel. I tried to keep it separate. And I researched, my thesis was on preciousness, anyway, in sort of reference to gems, minerals, and rocks. And I'll looked at the formations here for these ones. I looked very closely at the quartzes with the hexagonal crystalline structure and abstracted them and made the pieces. And as well, looking into other materials I could find. They're Australians from Western Australia, looking very landscapey, and was an accident that I actually got the cracked shapes. I'll bumped them in the car and they all fractured, and I really liked the looks of it. This sort of helped me in my decisions how to work further with them, which was, sometimes lucky accidents happened. Part of my master studies as well, looking at preciousness, were the royal jewels, which are modeled, the big neck piece on, things the Queen is wearing, just with different stones in it. First of all, they're cubic zirconia, man-made stones, the little glittery ones, simulating diamonds, and the other big pieces are volcanic rock, which has the glitter inclusions inside. The ring at the back is is my take on engagement rings, which I used uncut stones and, Here, this neck piece, looking like crystal structures, was actually the basis of that is the pinwheel pattern of the Federation Square. I don't know if you've visited it, but it's these beautiful shapes, and I sort of took big sheets and cut them all up and folded them, oxidized them, and stuck a few stones in them, which to me, look like crystal structures, and another little collection of the same family. These ones, again, are informed by the quartzes, the hexagonal structure, with adding a bit of color to it. On the left, there are vessel shapes, looking at the landscape and placing them and working with different oxides to color them. I also made a light out of aquamarine slabs, and the middle part is 400 millimeters, 400 by 40, sort of up, and about 2 centimeters deep, with LED lights. And the whole thing are placed on a big acrylic plate. And these little ones are sort of accompanying the show which I had at, it was my master's show, which I had at Süddesigns again. And they were inspired by the isometric formations inherent to the pyrite. So you all know that pyrite, the parent fool's gold, and a couple more. Well, and then in 2013, that was an interesting year. I think in 2011, I was really, in 2010, I attended an enameling workshop at a conference in Perth, and that opened new pathways. Elizabeth Terrell, who came from England, to show us how you can work with enamels and in a different way to decorate surfaces, not these shiny, colorful, bright things, a little bit more raw and organic. And I was really quite taken by it. And I'll discovered too that enamels are made from rocks. And I wrote sort of a whole idea about making, firing rocks straight onto enamel. And I was, it sounded good, I guess. And I got Australia Council funding to do this project, which was very exciting. What I found out is that with a lot of materials, they melted. I have only found one quartz which I could melt on the surface, but here I'll just, I think the bright red, one of the brooches I actually managed to melt the quartz on, which I crushed, and I put a few gold leaf parts into it and matted it all, sort of referencing the earth shapes, which you have seen maybe on the first image, which was up there from the cracked earth in the Nepal and Annapurna region. So the whole group of work, the other ones I used commercial enamels and threw cracked up rocks in there and fired them on the surface. And some of it, actually we got back, some of it wasn't as successful, it came off. So later on I did another mentorship with a professional enameler who showed me what I did wrong. It was good fun at the time and it looked good for the show. From there on, I'll delved back into the collection of rocks I had. I thought I have boxes and boxes full of home, and I was a bit off the cutting too much, and I just used them as they came, modifying them slightly to put them in settings, into jewelry, really enjoying the colors and shapes. And I think all of those ones are Australians as well. There is a lot to see there. So it was 17. I moved into, I had some life changes and some struggles. Anyway, I moved to Bridgewater and built myself a beautiful studio in the back garden opposite a wonderful reserve where I sort of live and work with my trusted companion, Doc, who's usually agreeing with everything and giving me really good company. Only at, I think, 4 or 5 in the afternoon, he tells me it's time to stop and go for a big walk. So studio is big enough to hold small workshops. I have 4 people maximum, and I have done mentoring for jewelers who wanted to learn particular things or wanted to develop some areas in their practice a bit more. And I have my first artist in residence at the moment here, and she actually studied with me and came to Australia for a couple of months to do a bit more work, which is nice. So one view out of the windows, they are part of my earlier work, and it's just such a nice shot. So I'll look more because I live right next to the reserve, not that I didn't live in nature before, but I do lots of walks, and I found all these little things like the Watsonia. I don't know if you're aware of it. This is horrible weed which grows everywhere, but the root looks amazing. It has this almost woven, knitted structure. It looks like little huts, the top, and I'll made some small containers and again using some of the materials I have, all of them, and just doing minimal interference with them and just leaving them mostly as they are, just slicing them open. They're all Australians as well. Beach pebble and the bit with the little snails in there is from a rock I picked up in Port Vellunga on the beach. 2 stone rings was a bit of a thing for me. I picked it up again and enjoy putting the different colors and patterns next to each other with a little bit of gold highlights. And this is going to my next project. I was invited to have a show at the David Roach Foundation, which is quite incredible. They have beautiful little objects. It's completely packed with treasures which have been made around, I think most of them are made around 1800 something, 10 or whatever. Ethically fully incorrect because the middle bits are cooked turtle shell, unfortunately. So I certainly won't be doing that. And the golden decorated container is stingray skin. I'm very intrigued by the mechanisms and the little walnut which opens up and has a nutmeg grater in there. I probably not going quite into that detail creating containers, but I made a few already which sort of moved on from the other ones I did, incorporating a bit of the parts I find on my daily walks through the reserve where I live. And I was looking also at spoons. Since 17 I started learning to make spoons, and I'm quite enjoying them. And the copper one is a sample for the tea caddy spoons I'm making. I will probably make some silver ones as well and put a few stones in them for this exhibition, which is in August for Sala. So yeah, I'm a bit quicker, aren't I? So I'll have a few images up of my inspiration here. And last year I did with my partner, we did a trek in Nepal, walking down the Kali Gandaki, the deepest valley in the world. It's in the lower Mustang area in Nepal to the left. And yeah, the first image was about the patterns and structures, and it was pretty amazing walking up there. The air got thin, but at 4,000 meters, I kind of had to turn back a bit. So lots of temples. When I was there the first time, there was no road, so there weaves a road. I was there in 89 before, and it was quite different, but I guess that's what happens. It's quite noisy, and trucks and landslides and lots of cars stuck everywhere. And you saw that image in the front. On the right-hand side there, the Tibetan prayers. They have prayer places where they they don't have cemeteries, but they put the prayers there for the people who have died, and there's quite a few of them. So the prayers radiate through the universe. And structures and more. Bark, rock with mosses growing into them, surprisingly very similar. And lichen, which I really do enjoy a lot. And I think they're all the things which inspire me, plus lots of rust, fallen down civilization that's on the way to Broken Hill. I forgot the name of the village, but there is one town where it's quite fascinating walking through there because there's nothing left anymore from the humans, just the stuff they left behind. And this was a very, very special place, Wataka, which is called Kings Canyon. And seeing up there, on top of it, walking through it, there's a whole area where you can see that it was all sea, and you can see the sand petrified in the rocks. So yeah, I really do enjoy visiting all these places. And rust, which is a big part of Australia's landscape. It's all red, the iron, which is rusting on the surface. Anyway, did I have some ideas? Whoops, where are we going? Some ideas for conclusion. Well, thank you for listening to me. And I guess after 44 years stuffing around with metal, Looking back, I feel, well, I'm still doing it, even so I really didn't like it in the beginning. And I kind of got the bug, and it's really nice to be able to have a bit of command over a material. And so I often talk to students about the passions and the perseverance. I think there was another P in there, but it's something which is good to stick with, because especially, I mean, you're all pretty amazing anyway, but I think there's hard times sometimes, and it's quite good to just move through them, and there's always a moving out. Anyway, one little quote from Heraclitus, and he talks about that change is the only constant in life. So, and well, I fully agree. That happens, and change is a good thing. Well, anyway, that's that. Thank you.